Namaskar. Om Sahna Bhavatu Sahna Bhuvaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahe Tejasvina Vadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. In a way, what I have said is we are talking about universal brotherhood, understanding each other. There was talk about war and that we should declare war on war. But I feel the first war comes from within. And it is here that the entire conflict starts. This conflict is part of human life and part of each person in their personal journey. A dancer standing on stage, a dancer is supposed to dance, but not speak. Where is that is a common aspect when a person grew up. I was born in a time when India was a newly emerged, had got freedom. And it was at that point of time that the whole concept of a person having certain vocations was predetermined. A woman had to be this, it had to be that. And a dancer taking up dance as a profession? No, 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 no. That wasn't to be. But why? Because dancers were imbued with a certain kind of a mindset and which was not part of a formal, structured, acceptable society. This kind of a notions comes from within each one of us and within each family. Each family is nurturing a child in an environment which, with their behavioral pattern, tangibly or intangibly, is impacting on the psyche of that little child. And if that be so, I think we need to introspect as to what we have done. Today we are in the 21st century, but what do we see around? We just see violence, violence, violence. I do remember a time when I was speaking to a group of children, and I asked them, what did you read in the newspapers today? Besides, of course, the popular film aspect, what they said was violence, violence, violence. And I asked them, in all these criminal activities, tell me how many classical artists were involved? There was dead silence. The reason is that classical artists, there will be differences of opinion, but the classical artists resolve those differences musically and through understanding. This brings me to the whole concept of each one of us somewhere wants to dominate. We want to dominate through our presence, through our ideas, and whether as an individual or as a group. It's much more comfortable to be in a group and therefore dominate. In the field of dance, I would say, and the performing arts, I would say history has shown up so many different occasions where there was conflict. There was conflict within and which the socio-political upheavals had given to us. How did we manage to bring about a balance? The balance that comes through that we all have to, which has given also a kind of a balance and therefore the development of music and dance and people in society. To take up coming from a so-called an upper middle class family, you are expected to go into certain professions. And of course, the challenges were there before each one of us. And for me, the challenge personally was there. Do I only become what is expected of me, that is to enter the civil services, or do I also become a dancer? The dancing part of it, yes, I got a lot of support from home. Though I do not come from a traditional dancer's family. And the fact it was my inner wish to be both, and we did it. Of course, it was, society said, If you are studying and studying physics, you cannot be a dancer. If you are being a dancer, you cannot study physics. I think these are preconceived mindsets which each one of us has, but it is for each one of us, if we are determined, we are passionate, we love what we do, we can find our path. This brings me to the concept of where have we lost our sensitivity in society. We do not know how to appreciate differences. We have forgotten how to appreciate differences, or we are keeping it on the back burner. In this fact that women are treated in one way, men are treated in another way. The world of dance has opened up many different facets, including, when I was working with Professor Ramchandra Gandhi, the grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, he once said, "Have you read the autobiography of my grandfather?" I said, "Of course." Like every one of us has read the autobiography of Mahatma Gandhi. Then he said, "Who's Rambha?" I said, "Rambha? Oh, Rambha in your grandfather's autobiography? Well, she was a famous dancer, Apsara." He said, "Yes, but I'm talking about in the..." And finally, it was a small. We like to acknowledge the top names. But that one little piece in the autobiography of Gandhi really made each one of us think. Where he says that as a little 10-year-old child, how he was scared of ghosts, darkness, thieves and snakes, and how he could not confide it in his parents or in his brothers and sisters for fear that he would be laughed at. And whom did he confide in? He confided in his untouchable maidservant, Rambha. And Rambha said, "Why are you scared? Take the name of Ram." And he said, and I started taking the name of Ram, and that has imbued me with strength because I had faith in Rambha, that she could never be wrong. And it is that had stood, that faith, that belief stood him throughout his life. And in that context, the question is asked, who is untouchable? We all, some way or the other, we practice untouchability, not only physically, but even through our minds. Who is an untouchable? X, Y, Z, depending on where the person was born, in which part, in which caste, clan is he born. Is that what untouchability is all about? And here is something that I'd like to share with you, which was put before me. Said, Mohan and Rambha playing. And each one, and Mohan, he suddenly touches her. And Rambha says, "Don't touch me, for I'm an untouchable." And Mohan says, "You an untouchable? No, I can touch you. So how can you be an untouchable? The only person that I can't touch is God. We're talking about God. I can't touch him. So he is the greatest untouchable." These are ideas which really, when you look into the experiences around, it makes us think. We as Indians, we think that our classical dances are so ancient. We speak, we have mudras, we have gestures. But this, again, let me say that there are different parts of the world are using, and it was brought to my attention when a book published in 1712 from Leipzig called The Theatre of Mathematics, and how in Europe this whole chapter was on the language of gestures, and each one of them says Weinen, and whatever gestures that we as Indian classical artists are used to was actually there. All the navarasas that we are used to was actually there, and the two together. And so the whole question came about that we have to go beyond what we are thinking, because there's a world outside. And we have to appreciate that every part of the world, every people in every corner of the world are thinking of the same thing, but in a different way, and how they're emoting it is a little different, and it has its own different fragrance. Talking about violence, today we are absolutely enraged when we think about the December 16 episode. But was it something new? Was it not expected? That somewhere within us, we have lost that sensitive spirit. We have lost the respect for another. Each one of us wants respect, but we do not know how to give respect. Traditionally, all cultures of the world have in their mythologies and legends all different aspects, scenarios, to be able to give respect to all other cultures of the world. But somewhere, the more we are wanting to move out, the more close-minded we become. If there was the humiliation of Draupadi took place thousands of years ago, and there was a Dushasana who was trying to disrobe her, it's still happening today, in spite of the fact that we are a very developed civilization world today, and yet we see this happening in all parts, in different corners of the globe. So what is civilization that we are talking about? And here again, it is dance, which helps us even to break these boundaries and to go beyond what is meant to be within the framework, because it is not only that I will enact it out, but if I go beyond it and just see the relevance of those incidents, those mythologies and episodes today, it's as relevant today, because you and I, each one of us, man or woman, is the modern day Dushasana. For today's Draupadi is not only a human being that we are talking about, but let us talk in larger, a little beyond. It is the entire Prithvi that we are talking about, the earth, and we are removing the cover, environmental cover, and creating this imbalance in this whole nature, and so that makes us the modern day Dushasana. And therefore, I'll just quote one piece, Dushasana, बस करो धरती का चीर हरण मत करो, फिर द्वापर को दोहराने का दुस्साहस मत करो, दुशासन बस करो, बस करो, बस करो. Going beyond the issue of woman and her pain, her angst, her anger, her anguish can also be reflected. It is not only only the romantic Naika that is being portrayed. Again, if a question was asked by Rambha to Mohan, says, and that is a question she asked then, but it is still being asked today. First of all, she says, prejudice and despair run deep, Mohan. I walk a tightrope. I walk a lonely tightrope of existence, wearing a bell around my neck, carrying night soil. I warn the highborn of approaching pollution. And we ask her to take the night soil, your and my human waste. She has to carry it, and yet we do not. And she says, I'm meant to be not only invisible, I'm not only, and so she says, who am I? And she said, in this invisibility, I am supposed to be invisible, I'm supposed to carry the night soil, I'm an untouchable. But when it comes to rape, the barriers break. It is that same untouchable woman who is raped time and again. So she says, where is this concept of untouchability and of dignity? And she says, you and each one of us is seeking dignity. She says, even in my own clan, I am seeking dignity. She says, how many sons must a woman bear in order to be honored by her own as a woman? And finally she says, tell me, who am I? Who am I? Who is Rambha? Who am I? Koham Mohan, Koham Rambha. And here, these are questions that were asked then. These were questions which were asked yesterday. These are questions which are being asked now. Each one of us are asking this question individually in our own little environment, and yet we have not found an answer. We are searching for it. Why have we not found an answer? Is because each one of us are just forgetting to respect the other, and that spirit of sensitivity has perhaps been hidden behind somewhere within us. It is there within us, but somewhere we need to polish it, nurture it, and bring it out. I would another aspect that I would like to mention is that when we are talking about universality, as a classical dancer, and let me now go on not on a very and just a little comparative. When I had worked with the Spanish flamenco dancers and the Western classical ballet dancer from Vienna Stadtopera, it was beautiful to see. It is so different. The differences are there, of course, and it's beautiful. But we saw the points of similarity, and that bound us together. It was, if this is the movement in Kathak, this is a very common movement in Kathak. Here in ballet, it is this movement, but it is so anti-gravity, as though you want to loosen your bonds with gravity going up. And in Spanish flamenco, it was more bound. Look at, and here again, if you saw this movement, in Kathak like this, in Western classical ballet, very ethereal, and in Spanish flamenco, so same movements, but how beautifully each one, the way it developed, and the kind of the genre, it is so different, the flavor is different of the same movement. And that is something that we sometimes forget. Each one of us in our respective spheres, we forget that it is that we have to understand differences, respect differences, be entrenched in our in wherever we are, with the soil that we were born in, but we have to have an open mind to appreciate all cultures of the world, all people of the world, and appreciate the difference. And if that happens, that war that we are talking about, the violence that we are talking about, will definitely be minimized. And in that, finally, I would like to mention that as a Kathak, born in the temples over 2,500 years ago, Gangaye Mahanadiye Tate Sabbo Kathaka Bhigarnatenam Stuti Tisikayam Ehirayan Adinaho Bhavenam Pasai. In that tradition, what are we doing? Here, this is the values of the Lord. I am just the medium. I give it to you, and from here I get my movement. But look at the beautiful parallel that you find even in Sufi thought, where again the Sufi Dervish dancers are in this movement. Exactly the same, reaching out to the Almighty, and they are with their feet here, giving it to the earth below. Look at, so if one opens one's mind and sees these parallelisms, I think that is the first step within each one of us in our personal journey of understanding of the creation and of living and understanding life. If I look at most of us who are here from belonging to this, we talk of Krishna. Krishna, the moment I speak of Krishna, it is with the flute. The flute of Krishna. The flute, the sound of the flute is so pure that it just transports you, elevates you. So because it is, and it cleanses you of your impurities. And that is the import of Krishna and his flute. And exactly the same is said by Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, who says, Bishnu azne chun hiqayat mi kunad, az judai ho shikayat mi kunad. Sinahahim sharah sharah asfiraq tabagoyam sharah dard ishqiyat. Says, listen to the plaintive notes of the flute, wailing the pangs of separation. Just as the heart of the flute is pierced with holes, so is my heart pierced with holes in this desire to be one with you. Says, har kara jamaze ishki chak shud, ooze hirso jumla ebi pak shud. Says, the way we remove our dirty clothes and cleanse ourselves of our impurities, the sound of the flute cleanses me of my inner impurities. Shad bash ish khush saudaima, e tabibe jumla illat haima. And if you call this the madness of love, long live this madness. And that is that madness of love that we all have to practice first within ourselves, hone that sensitivity in and that concern for each other, for our neighbor, for every being, not only human being, but for every being around us, and that will spread this madness of love and perhaps bring down to a significant extent the violence that rages within us. And then we will find that inner harmony. The moment we are at peace within ourselves, we will be at peace with surroundings. We have to love we have to love what we do. We have to respect everyone else, and we have to learn to disagree. We have to learn to accept disagreements. We have to learn to accept differences of culture, differences of thoughts, and we have to learn to accept everyone. And that is what, that is the only truth. There cannot be uniformity in the world. Ekam Sat, that is the only truth. Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. That is the one truth. The wise men have called it by different name. We call it by different name. Thank you very much indeed.